back, everyone. Now we have the panel discussion on challenges of urban sanitation. Urban sanitation in India faces many challenges: inadequate maintenance, ineffective management of fecal waste, rising groundwater contamination, and overdependence on centralized wastewater management are some of the challenges. Through this panel discussion, the panelists will look at the challenges and dependencies in addressing and scaling up the solutions to meet the challenges of urban sanitation. The session will be moderated by Ms. Natasha Patel, CEO of India Sanitation Coalition. Ms. Patel is a seasoned banker with 30 years of work experience in the financial service industry in India and overseas. As the CEO, she has steered ISC to partner with several members of the coalition to create and implement social sector initiatives between investors, grantees, and intermediaries, including the government, specifically around the enhancement of private sector funding in WASH. On the panel, we have with us Mr. Sharman Jha, CEO, Hindustan Unilever Foundation, and co-chair FICCI Water Mission, a crossover not-for-profit sector leader with more than 30 years of top-level corporate experience in emerging markets. Mr. Jha's early experience include helping build an integrated communications, fundraising, marketing engine to drive the wider conservation and sustainability agenda at WWF. Next, we have Dr. Ravi Mariwala, founder Smart Water. Dr. Mariwala has a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Delaware, where he authored 17 publications and received 5 patents for his work on carbon molecular sieves. We also have Mr. Mahesh Girdhar, MD and CEO, Ever Enviro Resource Management Private Limited. Mr. Girdhar has over 3 decades of global experience in business operations, strategy, and general management. Before joining Ever Enviro, he held key positions in organizations like Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemicals, Bayer Crop Science, and Monsanto. I request everyone to please come to the stage and take their respective seats. Now over to you, Natasha, ma'am.
Thanks. Thank you, Mitali. Good evening, everyone. And for this last session of the day, I promise to make it as lively as we can. I've got 3 really fantastic speakers here with me. Each one of them, if I had to put their years of knowledge together, would be over maybe 500 years, yeah? Something like that. Lots and lots of information in their heads, which we are going to try and draw out, and specifically the interesting parts, right? So, the topic of today's session is urban sanitation. And I think throughout today, we've talked a lot about urban sanitation. We've talked about theories. We've talked about different processes. I don't want to go into all that. I'd like to hear today from the 3 gentlemen we have. What are their personal experiences in their careers? What have they been able to bring out as challenges, their successes, their funny stories around, urban sanitation? There are 3 aspects of urban wash management that we look at: water, used water, and energy from waste. And if I can maybe give them each a title, here is my expert on water. There is my expert on energy, and this is my expert on waste management, used water, which is converted. So I'm going to first ask them individual questions, and then maybe we can take questions from all of you. So Shraman, let's start with water first, okay? In the history of your company, okay? We'll start with your company. Doesn't matter, that's the boring part. But you can just quickly bypass it. But in the history of your company, water has been a very, very deep-rooted aspect. You'll have done lots of work around water from your foundation. From your perspective, what do you believe is the most important piece of work that you all have done around water, and how does it impact us as a country?
So, at the outset, how can sanitation be talked of without starting the discussion with water? Whichever way you look at it, these two are inextricably linked. Till the time that water was plentiful, I don't think any of us had any major concerns about the availability of water in facilitating sanitation. But as we are reaching a stage where precious fresh water is getting scarce, indeed in our own households in urban Delhi and Bombay, how often do you see filtered piped water coming through being flushed down your toilets? With rare exceptions, it's there in every household. So that just tells you that historically how criminal all of us have been on this very precious asset which we've all treated as a free good. So of course, now that there's a much more awareness around water, and there are enough arguments to say that the more fashionable term, or not fashionable, I would say in vogue term, which is much debated about, the broader term of climate change, is actually manifested fundamentally as a water problem. And if you have any doubts about it, you just need to check how it translates into Hindi or any of the Indian languages. Jal, Vayu, Parivartan. So there's just no ambiguity on it. So having said with that little bit of a preamble, as an organization, most industries, and certainly all the industries that my mother organization is involved in, uses water. You have a bath with a soap, you use water. You wash your clothes, you use water. You have a cup of tea, you use water. Whichever way you take it. So water, of course, is an inextricable part. And when I say water, it is usable water. It's not salt water of the seas or this and that. It is proper usable water. Therefore, from whichever aspect you say, that you look at it from the macro aspect, right, from the coming out of climate change or even livelihoods to sanitation to even products that we own, our organization is involved in, water becomes integral part of it. So of all the initiatives that have taken place around water, it's difficult to pick out one. But since this audience is fundamentally an urban audience, I'll remind you all of something that would have floated into your WhatsApp accounts maybe 6 months or a year back, and that was a film that was made about 4 years or 5 years ago. It was a film about people having a shower bath in the middle of a desert, or not in the middle of a desert, in the middle of a rural community, and you suddenly see that amount of water becomes such precious water, drinking water, and use for daily use water for so many of those communities. I think just to jolt the awareness of the well-to-do urban class, I think that was a significant contribution, I would say, that's been made just to heighten the awareness on the issue of water.
Thank you. That's quite interesting, actually. Yes, I do. I have seen a lot of HUL's very, very touching, I would say, little pieces that you send out there to remind people about their part in this game. Right, so let's move on to used water. Used water, which is water that we, in the parlance of the sector, we call water that comes out of the kitchens or out of your washing machines and bathrooms. We call that used water. And let me turn to my used water expert here. He shared with me a really interesting piece of information this morning, which I wanted to share with you as well. I think your company, Smart Water, first started out looking at very large KLD projects initially, right, to manage wastewater and convert it into water that's usable. Again, what he mentioned to me this morning was that they can even go down to 1 KLD. Now, just imagine, 1 KLD is something that can actually service peri-urban or a large gram panchayat. Amazing. Things that we had never thought of maybe 2-3 years ago are now becoming a reality for us today. And if you're working in the Grameen, we don't have our colleagues from the government here today, but I'm really excited to share this with them. These are now new technologies that we can even take back into the villages of India. So again, tell me, Ravi, a bit more about your journey from 70 to 1, if I can call it that.
Thanks, Natasha. I think a very interesting question. You know, I come from a very hardcore background of chemical engineer. And what we learn in college is saying that, okay, you're doing at 1 KLD level, how can I do at 1 MLD level? And we get excited by that. And that is the biggest excitement. Yes, you got to go bigger, you got to go smarter. That's what we thought. I have been facing this reverse challenge of scale down rather than scale up. And that has been the most fascinating, because what we learned very early in our journey is that when you're trying to scale down, the phenomena are very different than what happens in the scale up. When you are scaling up, you can do a lot of things and you can predict. And this was very exciting for me to look at it. So I'll share an example what happened. We were working with a large developer in outskirts of Pune, and they said that we want to be very progressive, and they are very progressive, and we want to get a sewage treatment plant, which is a nature-based sewage treatment plant for 1,000 labor camp workers. I said, are you sure you decided the capacity right? You want us to help you decide the capacity? He said, no, we have done it right. Are you sure you're going to give me this much of water? If you're not going to feed them that much of water, you're not going to give me that much of water. That I can assure you. I said, yes, we are going to do that. So we had designed something for X capacity, and what we ended up getting was something was 0.1x. And that was a huge challenge for us, is how do you handle this? And we had laid down a parameter matrix and said these are the parameters we need to be able to handle these things. And about 90% of them were violated by the developer. I said, okay, let's look at it. We are engineers and we like to think on the feet. And as it happened, we had designed the STP for a certain reduction percentage, and all of those reduction percentages were met. The most interesting was that we were running at 10% of the rated capacity, so it was still working. And that is one of the things which really got me thinking, is that the scale down is not as the scale up. And the other thing which kind of came to my mind is that there are estimates which are produced, which are published by the government, saying that we give 135 liters per person per day. And we did a couple of bottoms-up calculation that if I was to look at in an urban area like South Mumbai, which is a very rich urban area, how much water do I require per day? Bottoms-up calculation, nobody is giving me a standard, and it comes to about 255 liters per person per day, because of washing machines, because of dishwashers, because of 2 cars being washed, everything put together. And that got validated by somebody else. And then how much of water of that is going for sewage? And that was some very interesting numbers which came up. And that really forced us to think about scaling down. So what is the lowest level I can get down to? So today we are doing about 1 KLD. 3 KLD is pretty standard. But going beyond 1 KLD, then there's a cost benefit, doesn't come out too well. And the other motivating factor for this was the traditional system is that people have a septic tank followed by a soak pit where the water gets percolated down into the ground and contaminates the groundwater or surface water. Now this is one of the largest causes of waterborne disease and malnutrition in the country. And we have to treat that to be avoiding any of that particular part. And that is the reason, I think that is more of a driving force for me than anything else to be developing these kind of systems. And of course, it is providing me the best technical challenges I can get. So that's a real added bonus. So I think that's the real reason why I have gone down out there. I think it matters to the lives of people, it matters to the environment, and I think all of us need to do that. It's a small piece of the puzzle, but it's a very important piece of the puzzle to be addressed out here.
Thanks, Ravi. I mean, you make 2 very good points. The fact that we have to deal with the solution end to end. So, whether it's 1 or 70, we still have to deal with it. Turning to Mahesh. Mahesh, I know that you're focused more on the energy part, but the energy part is also about bringing about a revenue model, right? Which is basically what we call, in very simple terms, waste to wealth. Yeah. My understanding is waste to wealth is achieved only when you have substantial numbers. So you have to have, like Ravi was saying, a substantial amount that comes out so that you can convert it and it becomes wealth. The challenge is, how do you convert it, and a small part of it, and make it wealth? So from your perspective, Enviro does a lot of this work. What have been your challenges and how have you been able to make it a success?
Thank you, Natasha. I think I recently joined this industry. I come from agriculture background, and earlier I was never thinking that agriculture can have so much of waste. Which is it audible now? Okay, audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I come from agriculture industry, and I never thought that agriculture can generate so much of waste, and I'll talk about that numbers as we talk through. But since we are on a specific topic of how we are actually generating wealth from waste at a small level, at a large level, we believe that waste is a waste until it is brought to a right place. It remains waste. So the first challenge for us is to bring it to a right place, and to bring to right place starts from household, starts from a village farm, right? So aggregation is a key challenge, right? If you are able to aggregate, then you are able to create a meaningful scale, because we believe that unless you are not able to create a wealth out of that, it remains a CSR or a government activity. If we create a business model out of that, you create a pull, right? I'll give you examples of what kind of pull we are actually creating. So just to introduce ourselves, because people ask me question that who are you and what do you do? So I would like to first introduce our company. We are Ever Enviro, and we are a platform company from India's largest climate infrastructure fund called Green Growth Equity Fund, GGEF, which was actually initiated by Government of India and Government of UK in 2017, and then Eversource Capital is managing this fund. It's about $1 billion investment in India with multiple verticals. We also into water business. We are into green energy. We are into green buses as well. I manage their Ever Enviro part, which is a waste management business, which is waste to wealth business. So what we exactly are doing, we are looking entire waste in the country from a value add perspective. And India generates about 254 million metric ton waste. Out of that, 15% gets generated in the cities, which is organic part, and a lot on inorganic part. You would have seen plastic and others, but I talk about organic part. And rest, about 85% is generated in the agriculture or agri-related industries. We should not forget that. That's a very big waste. What we face here in NCR, the issue of parali burning, the burning of stubbles, and we every day face here, we are part of the solution. What we are doing is that we are setting up CBG plants in the country. At present, we are setting about 20 CBG plants, and each plant is a high-scale plant with a significant investment in a PPP mode. I'll give you an example of two so that you will be able to understand the scale and what we do on the ground. Indore, we have an Indore Clean Energy project with Indore Municipal Corporation, which is fully funded and operated by us on the ground. And we are today receiving about 550 metric ton of organic waste. And in Indore, it starts from the household. 90% segregated waste is coming to our plant. We are in a position to deploy technology and convert that into CBG, and 200 to 400 Indore city buses are carrying that green energy, right? Same time, about let's say I calculated the number, some X percentage, significant percentage of household population is now getting green energy because we have tied up with Avantika gas, and we are able to supply that CBG we produce, green molecule we produce into the pipeline, and then the households are getting that. The key challenge still there is to have even 10% rejects which we come in our plant need to be managed well, right? That's the key challenge. It's a technology based projects whereby going down the scale we will not explode. It's going to be extremely challenging, and I'm listening to our friend here. We would see, is there a business case? Because if there's no business case, there's no value, and you cannot solve the problem. And problem need to be solved holistically. But we have created a system of aggregation. The second example is now very close to Delhi. We are getting every day, in the last 15 days has been very difficult in Delhi because of pollution, and most of the blame was put on stubble burning. Although there are few other elements, but let's talk about stubble burning. It's come from paddy field. Farmers have no choice. because they have to grow next crop in time and they have to burn it. We can't blame farmers. Fully we can't blame them because this is their livelihood. A 5-acre farmer will have to convert his cash flow from the 5-acre land only, and he need to grow right variety at right time, and he will have to grow the other crop. For us, aggregating that, let's say, parali or the feedstock for a plant which we are going to inaugurate in next month, it consumes about 30,000 ton of stubbles, and that gets aggregated from 15,000 acres, which means you are talking about connecting to 1,000 farmers, right? And you have to time it well, which when the crop get harvested, somebody has to go there and harvest it, reap it, dry it, collect it, bring to the plant. And then you have to keep it well because they are dry matter, they can catch fire. So the management of the feedstock is a critical aspect of waste management, right? If you are able to figure out the management and aggregation of the feedstock, business model exists. And today we are in a situation to actually develop the entire value chain. So we are not only developing a plant, but the plant is only 30% of our activity. 70% rest is operating the plant. You know, having a right connects, having a right value enabler, having right logistics in place, having right equipments in place, having right motivation and incentive in place, right, to actually ensure that we are able to collect that and use that in our plant. Of course, a lot of support is coming on the green energy development in the country, and which is helpful to the industry. We are very early stage today. This 254 million ton can actually produce 26 million metric ton of gas in the country. Today, India consumes 52 million metric ton. Out of that, 50% is imported, which means for today's consumption, if we organize the biomass well, right, if we are able to put a right incentive structure, right capability in place, right technology in place, we'll be able to supply around 50% of the requirement. I mean, it's a very far dream. The government of India is targeting 5% of CBG as a part of overall gas network, right, which itself needs about 1,000 plants in the country, and today there are very few plants. We are fortunate that we have taken lead and set up plants in each feedstock. So we put up set plants on municipal solid waste. Indore is an example. We're putting up 10 plants in Punjab, which will convert 3 lakh tons of the waste, you know, coming from 1.5 lakhs acres into CBG, as well as the agri industry generates. You know, we know sugarcane, we eat sugar, right? If you crush 1,000 ton of sugarcane, 4 ton out of that is a issue which is called press mud, and that press mud is an environmental issue. It's a waste for the industry, and we are converting that waste also into energy. So overall, we are seeing that waste, if you are able to bring it together at a right place, you can deploy technology, right? That's the principle on which we are working, and there's a business, there's need to business model around that.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's very interesting. I'll just pick up on that last phrase of yours, waste when we can bring it to the right place, yeah? You've successfully demonstrated that in the earlier example that you gave, which is in Indore, right? How did you do that? Because honestly, I don't know how many practitioners there are here, but everybody will tell you that the most difficult and challenging part is the collection part or the segregation part that, we all face. And NGO after NGO has put in place various kinds of, facilitation programs. How do we get people in India to be more civic-minded? Very simple.
Yeah, so I think this is not an entire effort by us. It's a joint effort, right? And we have been part of providing technology and capital and operating the plant. However, the entire work when it comes to segregation and collection at home, it started by Indore Municipal Corporation. And it's a project which is into PPP. And we believe that we can't do it alone. It has to be a PPP mode. It has to be a collective effort. And listening to Indore, I joined last month, there was the Indore Smart City Conclave there. Listening to that, they have taken about 7 to 10 years to develop system process in place. So it's about infrastructure, it's about right kind of communication, education and training, building capability, but very importantly, be mindful of, what is the incentive for a household? It's not only incentive, it's also penalty. So they used both incentive and penalty to ensure that segregation starts at home. What we are doing currently in the new projects we are taking in UP, like we are setting up now 10 plants in UP, we are setting up in Okhla, 2 in NCR, Noida and Ghaziabad, whereby we are ourselves helping that develop that capability to the ULB. So our role there is actually to, in the 2 years before the project comes into place, we should work with the ULB and help develop the capability. Right, and the learning is coming from definitely from on the ground, and I think Indore has been a successful case. And I'm really wondering as an outsider why it is not replicated anywhere else to that level. It can be replicated. It's now 3-4 years. It's working well.
No, that's true. I think every conference starts with let's replicate Indore, and every conference ends with that as well. So you're absolutely right. Maybe, Shravan, I'd like to ask you this question. You know, there is this company called Kalari Water, I think it's called. So they are looking at developing a water meter, you know, like we have our electricity meters, which enable the government to be able, or enable societies to be able to gauge how much electricity is used at each household level. So they are looking, they've developed what they call as a water meter, which you can now put into individual houses and which can actually tell you the amount of water that is being used by the household. So effectively helping the local administration understand what the water requirements are at a, you know, at an urban level, and also the supply then becomes that much easier. The actual need for these water meters is also from a cost perspective. So essentially, how much should we be charging each household? How successful do you think this can be in the long term for a country like India? I mean, we've done it in electricity. Is it possible in water?
Everything is possible, and the bigger question is, do you have a choice? And the question is, how do you want to phase it? How do you want to pace it? Should it start in the most upmarket and posh localities to start with? So at least says you need to start somewhere. Yeah. And of course, issues like this will also always have its the political and other dimensions of it. But the basic underlying principle that water is not a free good to be just left running. You know, when we were in school, any child with a running nose was said to have a municipal tap, because it was meant to be by default running, and no tap would ever close. And we do know that on the extreme, in countries which are water scarce and who value water a lot, like Israel, even if you have a dripping tap in your house, they have mechanisms that they'll detect it, they'll fix it, and they'll penalize you for having left a dripping tap or having left a tap on. So these could be two extreme cases, but as a direction, that will it help establish that water has a clear value, and therefore water has to be valued, has to be used judiciously. I don't think there are two ways to it. You talk of the urban side, maybe a large part of the water that's actually used is, or the excessive water that is used is on the agriculture side, and especially with these large bore wells and which can pump out and which are getting more powerful by the day, and they're pumping on far more than you can need, and that water is not recharging back to the ground well. So it's like a bank balance that your ancestors have left for you. You can keep spending it, but unless you put something back, that will get over today or tomorrow, right? So I don't think there's anything that that can be avoided. That has to be a direction. Where, when, and how, those are the more tricky questions that will need to get addressed.
So from your perspective, where is the biggest challenge that India faces on its waterfront? Is it on the urban side? Is it rural? I mean, agriculture just because of volume, is that why we say it's agriculture? Or is it from a complexity perspective, is it our cities and our more urban developments?
Starting with, of course, water is, it's like saying, is a small city less important than a big city? No, everything is important, but in matters of sheer scale, since about 80% of all fresh water use is in agriculture. So unless you make a dent there, you will not make a dent on the broader issue of water security. Does it mean that those who are living in the cities who have relatively less or consume relatively less water, they should be careless about water? Of course not. You have to be sensitive, you have to be aware of it, that it is a precious commodity, and in fact the water that's reaching you itself is going through a lot of processes and steps, and it's somebody's water which is coming to you. It's not coming necessarily automatically. It's not that just because my house is built there, therefore the groundwater is all mine. or if you are sitting in Delhi and there are canals which are bringing water to flush your toilets, it doesn't necessarily go that way. But in terms of sheer scale, of course, agriculture becomes a very large one, because just think of it this way: one tube well per minute will pump out, maybe God knows, Ravi will have a better clue of that, maybe 1,000 or 10,000 times more liters of water than one tap running in your bathroom. But both are important. It's also not only the final impact, it's also the philosophical commitment to saving water. And I think that's a very important step.
Yeah. And, picking up from the last thing that Shaman said around, groundwater. One of the things that one keeps reading about is that India's groundwater levels are so abysmally low. They're the lowest, in the world today. And if we continue this way, we're pretty much not going to have any groundwater left. Maybe exaggerated to some extent, but from your perspective, having worked so much with technologies that are actually helping us to retreat our water, used water. What is the correlation between treated water and how do we replenish our groundwater so that we actually have a bank left at the end of the day for ourselves?
I think that's a very, very good question, and the answer is not so straightforward. Okay, I think to come at an answer, what I like to look at is numbers. Okay, so if I look at the numbers broadly, we are pretty regularly getting, as a nation, about 4,000 cubic kilometers of precipitation every year. And out of that, about 2,100 cubic kilometer of precipitation goes off into the Bay of Bengal, most of it, little bit into the Arabian Sea. And that helps trigger your southwest monsoon. Okay, so that's one thing. We have approximately 1,900 cubic kilometers water available for us, out of which 800 is more or less evaporating. Okay, and what we have left with us is about 1,100 to 1,200 cubic kilometers of water, out of which farming uses about 956. So now you tell me that if you want to get your bank balances right, what do? Let us look at the motivation for reuse and recycle of industrial water and sewage water. Those are two different things altogether. We need to really treat the industrial water for sure, because it has got contaminants which nature has only seen in the last 300 years. These are chemicals which are there, or greases and oils and such things. So we really need to treat so that other sources of water do not get contaminated, and they get it recycled back to the industry. So all the industries are following something called zero liquid discharge, which we are aware of. The next question comes in is sewage. Now we got an abysmal record on treating sewage. About 23% of sewage is treated. Now the question comes in is that we have anyway small amount of sewage which is generated and which is treated is even smaller than that. What kind of a needle are we going to be able to move? And this particular needle becomes very important in the urban sector, whereby you can have multiple uses of treated water, and that will reduce the pressure on fresh water coming into the city or the fresh water requirements for the city. So that is one thing which is there. But the argument on agri practices is a very strong one, and how do you handle that particular problem is a huge, huge challenge, because there is a historical baggage which we are carrying, and there are historical practices which we have not upgraded. But there are obviously some, really lovely green shoots in that matter. And in terms of, I think, the way in which government is addressing that also in terms of millet mission, which uses much less water, and that is one of the things. There's a couple of good projects which have been done by some of the other institutions like World Wildlife Fund, where they've shown that agri water can be saved through a public-private partnership and a lot of facilitation and a mindset change. And plus, of course, companies like ITC, etc., also have shown that sugarcane water, how you can do that. So I think what I would say is that saving about or reducing about 1% to 2% water consumption in agri every year or every 5 years will go a long way and have that water available for our urban growth as well as industry. And believe you me, that industry does require water, and they cannot keep on paying a lot of money for the water. And today the parity between industrial water, potable water and agri water is, there is no parity between them. There's tremendous disparity between them, where industry is paying about 10 or 15 times more than anything else compared to potable water, and agri water is more or less free. So I think there is a structural change which is tremendously required out here to be able to address this problem, and that's how I look at it.
Interesting. I just have one last question, and I'm going to, unfortunately, a colleague from JSW is not here, but he was the one who really posed it to us right up front. He said, you know, lots of industries are built on the periphery of large cities, right? And all these industries are using water. They have the technology which is already there on their premises to treat this water, because that's what's mandatorily required by the government. Why can't this same technology be used to help the municipalities treat their own water? So, I mean, I'm going to throw it open to all three of you gentlemen, whoever wants to take a stab at it. It's actually a very exciting concept, because, you know, it automatically brings down the ability of the municipalities to take on that whole load. But is it actually feasible? I mean, can we actually think about this as a viable solution? Anyone?
I'll start with a live example of that. There's a very interesting story which happened in Bombay. Within the city of Bombay, you have two chemical plants. One is RCF and one is HPCL or BPCL, I forget. So RCF recognized that their water treatment system was fabulous. So they told the Bombay Municipal Corporation, please give us sewage and we will treat it and take it and use that. And they started giving until they realized that they thought that they were getting really paid less for the sewage, so they increased the prices higher than the sweet water. RCF stopped taking that and they started taking sweet water. So I think there has to be a win-win situation.
So it comes back to the pricing.
Comes back to the pricing. Second point which I find is that industry is charged. If I look at MIDC is charging water, that is Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation, something like 80 or 100 rupees a meter cube. Bombay Municipal Corporation charges drinking water as something like 7 or 8 rupees a meter cube. The same quality of water. What is the difference? Somebody has an ability to pay more. That's why I do it. You're subsidizing this where you're not even covering your operating cost of water. So if you want to bring in something like treatment technologies for sewage to coming to a potable level, the cost of water is going to increase, and who's going to pay for that? Today, if you look at desalination of brackish water, I'm not talking about the sea water, it runs anywhere between 150 to 250 rupees per meter cube. And bringing that down, it can be done, but is this the right thing? Plus, we are not even taking into account the carbon footprint which arises out of that.
Yes, absolutely.
So my point is that we are getting so much of water. Can't we look at a little more creative solution where we don't go that way and look at harnessing fresh water from the rains and using that?
Harnessing fresh water, come on, that's your area.
No, it's all our areas. It's not my area or your area. All our areas, all our lives, our lives get impacted.
I take that back.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, all our lives get impacted by that. And yeah, so the question that you asked, it's not a matter of technology. It's not a secret technology that X factory has or Y factory has. And with things like Alliance for Water Stewardship, etc., kicking in. So again, the more fundamental question is the comment that Ravi's just made, that will it be sustainable? Is there the prime market mechanism and logic in its favor? So in some of the lever factories, for Unilever factories, for example, around that, this entire movement through this Alliance for Water Stewardship, it's not only the factory but also the catchment area around the factory of the neighborhood, neighboring villages, etc., that is also being covered similarly. Now, however, to make it really scalable in different ways, the economics has to be made to work, and that's a broader question. But it's not. I think the point I just like to leave it with, that it's not the noble intent that water has to be. I don't think anyone's short of noble intent. It's to make it happen. Certain hard and tough decisions have to be made so that the right valuations come in, and water is given a value. I think the starting point is that water is not necessarily given a value by various consumers and stakeholders. We can still choose to charge them differentially and so on. It's in a practical sense, but the fact that it has a value, I think that becomes a very, very cogent and an important part to that. A question which struck me on one of my rural visits, you're around a water body or source, often people have to go to collect their water. Who do you see there? Women, and only women. There is a strong gender dimension to that. And I wonder, men or women, if any of us here in the room are even capable of lifting a pot full of water and placing it on our heads, forget walking the few kilometers that we need to. So, I mean, there is always a price to be paid in some form or the other, but how do we kind of I think it's very much a matter of bringing that to everyone's consciousness before we move on.
Yeah, I think just to add on the municipal part, and then maybe I agree as well. But on the municipal part, for example, what we receive in our wet waste in indoor plant is actually 80% wet. So 80% is water, right? So the plant generates multi kls of water every day, right? We are in a process of finding solution today. It's ETP and used into STP. That's true, but that water contains nutrition, right? And we test that, and that contains significant nutrition that can feed plants, right? The issue earlier was that when you don't treat the water, it's smelly and it's an inertia around using it. Going through a digested process of anaerobic digestion, you actually do away with the smell. There is no smell left in that, right? It's only the inertia part left. So we are now trying to find a solution, working with the corporations, that okay, we are processing this waste, water is coming out there, that water should flow back to the forestry of the city. You actually avoid using fresh water in the forestry, and that the model we are working on. Right? The one solution you can build on further. On agriculture side, and you are rightly picked up numbers, and since I come from agriculture, key issue is certain crops which consume water. Israel is the best example, right? And in India also, on one side you look into northern part of India, and then you look into Maharashtra, right? Where water is not there, about 4 million hectares of the cultivation is today happening under drip irrigation system. It's not happening in Punjab, Haryana. It's freely available. You are cultivating rice, and rice consumes 65% water in the flooding. The technology available, you don't need that. Entire let's say southern hemisphere grows rice without flooding water. Technology available. My previous company introduced the technology. I developed a world's first carbon credit program with UNFCCC on rice. Convert flooded rice into a direct seeded rice. You will save so much of water that everybody can take bath 5 times a day, just from one crop and one use. You don't need to attack everything. Attack only one crop and one use.
Interesting. We started with urban sanitation, and we've ended up talking about a lot of other very, very interesting things. But I think it's important to note that sanitation is really, and we started, Nena spoke about this. We started the conference this morning talking about the interlinkages between wash and, as you very rightly said, what is there without water. So it's important that we talk about all these other aspects as well. We need to connect all these dots to be able to really understand what is a viable and a sustainable solution as far as sanitation is concerned for the future. I'm going to throw it open for questions. If anyone has any questions, these gentlemen are here and happy to answer. Questions? Yeah, there. You can use your mic here. Yeah. If someone can give him a mic.
I think I'll be audible now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
It's working.
Yes, precisely, this is a good discussion that 80% of the water, usable water, is used by farmers. So if we see the use of water by corporates, corporates they have to do this and they are doing this because they understand and there is also mandate. Similar is a case with the household, urban households, if I will speak. Now there is a bit of awareness and they are doing this. But the farmers who are using the most of the water, how aware are they that we have to do? How motivated are they? And how much have we reached them through our mechanism that you will also have to make efforts to save water. So this is a concern that I am having, if you can throw some light on this.
Would you like me to comment?
Yeah.
Can I start on
Yeah,
that?
please.
Go ahead.
Maybe. See, honestly speaking, I am also from farming background. Only education won't help. There need to be a business case. Why should farmer use less water? What's in it for him? And unless you define that, it's not going to happen. Because it's easy, because just technically, water acts as a weed suppressant, right? For a farmer, using more water in a rice field is also to suppress weed. You need to give him a solution, then he'll change. There has to be a value proposition. That's lacking. Where you value proposition, it's working. I told right now, 10 million hectares in India are using drip water. They are not using drip water because they don't have water, because they have seen value proposition. The nutrient use efficiency increases, farmer sees better yield, he's shifting it. He's not shifting because of water. He's shifting because he sees adjacent benefits, right? So I think it's agriculture topic and I can talk a lot on that, but it has to be a value proposition behind that, and then it's possible. Everybody looks for value and they'll shift. And they're shifted, right? Many farmers, you go to, again, western part of India, almost 100% of fruits, vegetable is now grown on drip. Not because they don't have water, because they are getting better yield. They're getting better practices and hence they are shifting it. So it's about that, create a case. That's my experience. So
Thank you. No, that's true, but you have to have a value proposition for everything. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed. You're right.
Yeah, also, just what you're talking about, drip irrigation and technology, I think two of the cases I have seen, I just was reading one of the cases which is with World Wildlife Fund, where they in Uttar Pradesh in Karula River, they basically modified the river flow in a certain way which was benefiting the farmer and helped them do, rather than flood irrigation, some other type of irrigation. I'm not too aware of it, what the methods are. I think it was trenches and furrows and ridges kind of irrigation. They've been able to save so much of water that the river is revived because of the environmental flows. And that is not a technology, I think it's a combination, building awareness, building trust and confidence in that. So I think there is education which is kind of happening out here. And if that happens and trust is built up, then there is a scope for doing some, minor interventions to get major benefits kind of a thing.
Great. Any more questions? No? Then thank you very much, gentlemen.
मेरा एक सवाल है
हाँ जी.
कि जो पूरे भारत में, विश्व में जो इंडस्ट्रीज औद्योगिक क्षेत्र है, वो ज़्यादातर वाटर, पानी का दुरुपयोग ज़्यादा होते हैं. तो इसके बारे में क्या करना चाहिए? ज़्यादातर कंपनी, फैक्ट्री, जीआईडीसी ज़्यादातर पानी का बहुत दुरुपयोग करते हैं और वेस्ट पानी जो होता है कंपनी का, वो अच्छे पानी में चले जाता है, नदी नाला सरोवर में चले जाते हैं, तो वो भी पानी दूषित हो जाते हैं. तो इसके बारे में कुछ सोचना चाहिए.
आपने जो बताया उसके इंडस्ट्रीज़ को तो अभी मैंडेटरी हो गया है कि उनकी ट्रीटमेंट होनी चाहिए, पानी की ट्रीटमेंट होनी चाहिए. और एक नया इनिशिएटिव नहीं है, ये काफ़ी पुराना इनिशिएटिव है, कहते हैं ज़ीरो लिक्विड डिस्चार्ज. जो पानी आपकी फैक्ट्री में आता है वो बाहर कहीं से भी नहीं जाना चाहिए. बड़ी फैक्ट्रीज़ जो महाराष्ट्र में है, गुजरात में, उस पर बहुत टफ हो गए. अगर आप अंकलेश्वर पनोली की जगह देखोगे तो वहाँ पे अभी बहुत टफ हो गए हैं ये बाबत में. अभी मीडियम और स्मॉल कंपनीज भी इसके अंदर आ रही है धीरे धीरे करके. तो एक इनिशिएटिव ये वहाँ पे चालू हो गया है और पहले ही डिस्चार्ज ही नहीं करने देते हैं, वो पूरा ट्रीट ही करके खुद रीयूज़ करने की बात हो रही है. उसके लिए गवर्नमेंट बहुत टफ हो गई है अभी. अगर आप तमिलनाडु में देखो, आंध्र में देखो, तेलंगाना में देखो, महाराष्ट्र देखो, गोवा या गुजरात में देखो, सब जगह पे ये रीयूज़, रिसाइकल, ज़ीरो लिक्विड डिस्चार्ज सबको करना पड़ता है, उसके बिना उनको लाइसेंस ही नहीं मिलेगा कि ऑपरेट कर सकते हो, और ये गवर्नमेंट बहुत टफ हो जा रही है इसके बारे में।
दुरुपयोग है तो सदुपयोग में बदलना पड़ेगा, और इसके लिए भी जो विधि भी इसी के साथ है। तो वही उन्होंने जवाब दिया कि जो वेस्ट पानी जो निकलता है, अब कानूनन वो वेस्ट पानी को ट्रीट करके ही निकाला जा सकता है, नहीं तो नहीं निकाला जा सकता है। उस पर जो विधि है बिल्कुल सटीक है और काफ़ी कड़क है।
और अभी गवर्नमेंट ने नोटिस भी देना चालू कर दिया है। अगर आप देखोगे अंकलेश्वर MIDC में इतनी सारी नोटिस आ गई कि कंपनीज बंद हो गई हैं, ये आपको एड्रेस करना ही पड़ेगा।
आई थिंक जो आप बता रहे हैं उसको कहते हैं बिहेवियर चेंज ऑल्सो। मतलब एक बार गवर्नमेंट ने बोल दिया और सब मतलब मानना चालू करेंगे, ये तो नहीं हो सकता ना। तो धीरे धीरे जैसे नोटिसेज आती रहेंगी वैसे वो अपनी मतलब तरकीबें बदलते जाएंगे। नहीं, बहुत बड़ी समस्या है ये। सैनिटेशन वर्कर्स जो कि हम कहते हैं उनके लिए बहुत बड़ी समस्या है। और आपने आज सुना होगा महुआ ने चैलेंज दिया है अभी बहुत सारे कॉर्पोरेट्स को कि आप अलग अलग किस्म के स्कीम्स लेके आएँ हमारे पास ताकि हम इस समस्या पे गौर कर सकें। तो मतलब फर्स्ट टाइम महुआ ने ये खुद ऐलान किया है कि उनके लिए ये बहुत ही बड़ी प्रॉब्लम हो रही है। अभी तक ये प्रॉब्लम सोशल जस्टिस मिनिस्ट्री के नीचे आती थी, लेकिन अभी महुआ ने खुद ये प्रॉब्लम अपने हाथ में लिया है, आपने देखा होगा सवेरे। तो आशा है कि आगे जाते ये भी हम कुछ अच्छी तरकीबें निकाल सकेंगे इसके लिए। Right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. For group photo. I now request Ms. Naina Lal Kidwai, Chair India Sanitation Coalition, to please give a vote of thanks.
I won't be long. This is really just to quickly recap what we've had today. An amazing morning with great stories from what it takes to become an award winner at the India Sanitation Coalition FICCI Awards. And for every one of those examples, to remind you to make sure that you collect the accolades book, which is in any case also available as information on our website. We've had interesting deliberations through the day, and I can only remind you about the program tomorrow, which will basically look at areas in a little more depth. You heard a lot about the Lighthouse Initiative. Tomorrow morning, we have the Secretary, Vinnie Mahajan herself, leading this, and a lot of sharing across our corporates on what I dare say is the biggest PPP program in sanitation at the village level today, which is the Lighthouse Initiative. It's very exciting. It has its challenges, but you will hear more about that detail in the morning, including from some of the players who have signed up for it. We have programs then in the afternoon on plastic and its circularity. Wash financing, it came up today in terms of models of blended finance, and I hope that we will have some of those examples to share tomorrow from some of the practitioners and some of the work that we ourselves are doing at the India Sanitation Coalition. And then on communication, as we go ahead in terms of developing our role in behavior change, is how we will end the day. So it promises to be a pretty full day again. It's been a long day for many of you here. Thank you for being with us to the bitter end, and we see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock.